Podcasts are hot right now. How do I know? Well, you're listening to one right now, aren't you? But you might be wondering, how on earth do I get my voice out there and start my own podcast? It all seems so intimidating. Between hosting and platforms and monetization, it can get real complicated real quick. Well, I'm going to let you in on a little secret. We started this podcast over 2 years ago, not knowing clue one on how to do it. So how do we do it? We did it with Anchor. Anchor is the free podcast app with creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer. And Anchor will distribute your podcast for you, so it can be heard on all the platforms like Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and many more. And everybody likes money, right? Well, you can make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. It's everything you need to make a podcast in one place. So go right now, download the free Anchor app, or go to Anchor FM to get started. It's the e-commerce minute, your daily dose of e-commerce, tech, and retail news with your hosts, Bart, Mroz, and John Suder. The e-commerce minute is a production of SUMO Heavy, a digital commerce consulting firm in Brooklyn, New York, and Philadelphia. Find us on the web at sumoheavy.com. It's e-commerce minute episode 650.
In today's episode, Roborevenge lets you cash out on Robocallers.
Most of us have experienced the nuisance of spam calls. Some get hit harder than others. Some calls might be more sinister, like the scams attempted on elderly folks. Some trigger furious responses from the receiver. But one thing is for sure, it's irritating, unnecessary, and we've all wondered why. With legislation and do not call lists, it's still a thing in 2020. There's a company that might have a solution that we've been begging for. Do Not Pay, part of a group of consumer advocacy services meant to protect people from corporate exploitation, is launching a new app called Roborevenge. Love the name. The app is aimed at helping the nightmares surrounding robocalls by giving you a burner credit card to get their contact details, then giving you a chatbot lawyer to automatically sue them. First, the service puts your number on the Do Not Call registry, which makes it illegal for companies to plague you with unwanted calls. Then, when you inevitably do receive a phone call, you hand over the virtual credit card details generated by Do Not Pay. The credit card transaction then collects the scammer's contact info, which Do Not Pay will use to automatically generate demand letters and court filing documents to help you sue the spammer under the Telephone Consumer Protection Act, or TCPA. Do Not Pay's founder and CEO Joshua Browder, a true American hero, says that the service is meant to provide financial incentives for companies to stop robocalling. He said, all of the big companies like AT&T and Apple have failed to protect consumers. The only way the problem will end is if the robocallers start losing money every time they call someone. The thing about Roborevenge is that it doesn't require any new legislation or tech solutions to be implemented. It just makes people aware of their existing legal rights. It's not an entirely automated process since you'll still have to listen to the pitch and give the burner credit card detailers to a caller over the phone. But maybe it's not so bad if you know you can get a check at the end of the process. Unfortunately, Roborevenge won't work if your spam call comes from overseas. Quote, those people you can't sue because you don't even know where they are, end quote, Browder explains. But this seems like a practical, efficient solution to one of the most irritating occurrences phone users face. A bell to this one. It's good.
This is funny.
I love it only because it's a spite app.
Conniving. I like it.
Well, it's a guy who built sort of AI for parking tickets and things like that.
Oh, is this the same thing?
It's the same guy, yeah.
Oh,
same company, same person. Yeah, so they can do AI stuff. But I read that. I was like, ooh, this is good.
Yeah.
This is very, very good.
I personally would never use it because I'm afraid to talk on the phone in general. So I wouldn't
You're a Gen Z. You guys don't use phones?
Get far
What
enough
is that?
for them to, ask for my card stuff. But I like this for the people who have a minute who want to do it.
See,
Sorry,
I'm the
that's
opposite.
just too funny.
I will talk to these people. I call them back all the time. I had one of those the other day. It was like an obvious person from overseas saying, your social security number is in danger. If you do not call us back, your social security number will be put on a list. And and it's just totally ridiculous. So I called him back, and it sounded like he was in a call center.
Oh, that's always
So
fun.
I called, I was sitting at my desk, and I was playing some music. I hit redial. And they would sit there and listen to the music. Hello? 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 And I'm like, well, you know what? Every second that I'm messing with this guy, they're not messing with someone else. I mean,
Oh, you're a vigilante.
Yeah, I'm a vigilante. I'm like Batman for telemarketers.
John, remember when I was laid up at my parents' house for a while because I had an
Mhm.
accident? I had one of those federal tax things
Mm.
people call. You have to. I'm like, I'm laid up. I can't do it. And they're like, well, you have to get in your car and go to the bank. So then, there's a whole story behind that. But the guy is like, well, I'm like, and I was like, I caught on because they were convincing for a bit. And then I was like, wait a minute, can you just send me a letter? Like, that's what's supposed to happen.
Yeah.
I know way too much about it. But I'm like, they're like, no, you have to go to bank now. I was like, then no. Then they're like, well, we're going to have a sheriff arrest you. I'm like, okay.
Like,
I hung up.
my address. Come on.
Somebody
over.
called again. No. I didn't say no address. The guy calls me. He's like, this is the sheriff. Where are you? I'm like, okay, this makes no sense, buddy.
The same
You
thing.
should know where I am if you want to arrest me.
The same thing happened to Melissa at lunch the one time. She's like, okay, well, can I have the sheriff's badge number? they were like,
Well, there was that story that they called a sheriff, actual sheriff.
Yeah.
And they're like, we're going to send a sheriff to arrest you. And he's like,
oh, yeah, there's that video.
There's a video. And he's like, go ahead.
There was the woman police officer. She kept them online and she did a video. And she did it to show people because who's most vulnerable to this kind of activity? It's seniors. So they need to kind of see that to like, this is what's happening. This is what's happening to you if you give them your information because they get scared. They don't know what's real and what's not.
I actually, speaking of which, have a quick little story for you about scammers and grandparents. This one time I had like 6 missed calls from my grandparents and I was like, what in the world is going on? So I finally called them back, and I don't talk to my grandparents on the phone a lot, but I called them back and I was like, hello. And they're like, Brittany. And they were like freaking out. And I was like, what? They were like, we just got a call. Your ribs are broken. You're in jail. They asked us for money to come get you and all this stuff. Are you okay? I was like, yeah, I'm sitting in my apartment. They were like, oh my goodness. And I was like, you probably just got scammed. And they do that to my grandparents all the time. Like one time they called my mom and said that my dad was in an issue in Philly with my grandparents and stuff like that. And like they had to send money, and they always do that to my grandparents. And I was like,
I mean, they're all about, you know,
can't.
all their sort of people. And then you're like, what are you doing?
Like, it's so annoying because
that's
then you
actually
have them
Brittany, the
out.
one with your grandparents. That's actually pretty common. Like,
yeah.
Someone is hurt. You must come get them, send money or do something. Unfortunately, they stalk and do enough research, just enough to scare the crap out of you.
Yeah, which I was, because they said my name. They said Brittany. I was like, great. That's really nice. Yeah,
but they probably don't know much more about you except that your name is Brittany, but that's all they need.
Yeah.
You know, that's all they need, that little emotional connection where it's like, oh my God, something's wrong with Brittany.
Yeah. It's
that's
very predatory. Stuff. I hate it. That's
scary stuff.
That's why we're talking about Roborevenge.
So the website for the service is donotpay.com, which is actually a really beautiful website. It says the world's first robot lawyer. There's an app, of course, because of course there's an app. And with Do Not Pay, you can appeal parking tickets in any city, any service or subscription, jump the phone queue on any company, schedule appointments with the DMV, and sue anyone in small claims court. Yeah, get them.
We love small claims court.
I hate scammers.
Same.
And the recently passed Trace Act also grants the FCC new powers to pursue and punish illegal robocalls. Now, federal fines can reach as high as $10,000 per call and requires major carriers to adopt new technology that will alert consumers to incoming robocalls. Let me ask, guys, how often does your phone ring with scam likely or unknown numbers?
Like 7 or 8 times a week.
Yeah, I go through these phases where it's like it's ringing all the time, and then I don't get a call for a week because what I do is, what do? You look at you will let it ring, you dismiss it, then you go and look up the number. Is it a scammer? Now I get a lot of these, like my mortgage company for some reason likes to call me under all these different numbers. People trying to sell me home improvement services. You know, some of them are legit, most are just garbage, and then I block them. And then a whole new batch just springs up like weeds the next week. It's like,
I can't even wrap my brain around it.
I think it's the only good thing that the latest iOS update did for the actual phone. It's like, don't know the number, just ignore it.
Yeah, spam risk.
No, no one calls me.
My good friend Spam Risk.
Spam likely.
Spam likely.
Spam likely.
I went to school with Spam likely.
Good.
We both made the same joke.
Spam likely. All right, we'll close this one up a little. Stat time. The FTC got 5.4 million complaints about unwanted calls in 2019. 71% of the complaints reported that the call was a robocall. If you go and look up a phone call on Google, there's a bunch of those sites.
Mhm.
And I love that people actually spend the time and fill out the form. They called me and I don't know what they wanted. And they were asking me and they called 7 times and I told them not to call me anymore. But it's actually very useful sometimes when you're iffy about a number.
Those are the true vigilantes.
They are the
ones who
true.
update those.
Not all heroes. The Do Not Call registry now has 239.5 million numbers on it, but what good does that do? More than 4 million were added over the past year. And a little spicy tea here. In 2017, First Orion reported that spam calls accounted for only 3.7% of all calls. By 2018, that number spiked to 29.2% and is on track to hit 50% of all calls. By now, the United States receives the 8th most spam calls globally, with Americans suffering an average of 18 robocalls per month. That sounds about right. Who uses the phone anymore anyway? Just send me a text.
True.
All right. You guys got anything else on this one?
Nope.
Nope. All right. That's your e-commerce minute for today. We'll see you on the internet tomorrow. That's it for today's show. If you like the show, do us a favor and subscribe or leave us a review on iTunes. And don't forget, you can now listen to the e-commerce minute on your Amazon device. Just add e-commerce minute to your flash briefing. And finally, if you have a comment or suggestion or just want to say hi, find us on social media at SUMO Heavy.